help you. You can't do everything on your own. It's not possible. You can get so far on your own, but you can't, the things I want to achieve, you can't do on your own. So actually the physical doing stuff, but also you mentally, because again, we can't fix all our own problems. It's not possible. You take cars to get MOTs and people would work on it and collectively people help fix it and then it carries on driving. You can't expect yourself to go through life just like crashing into things and never being repaired.
Welcome back to the Mindful Creator Podcast, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're loving the episodes and if you're loving the guests, then please make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Also, make sure you comment below with your favorite part of the episode or the part that impacted you the most from the conversation, because I absolutely love hearing how the conversations are making a difference for you. Your interaction and engagement is what helps me make this podcast that much bigger and better, with even more amazing guests and even more powerful conversations. None of this would be possible without you. So again, I'm hugely grateful. Thank you so much, and let's get into the show. My guest today is Anastasia Ttofis. Anastasia's a solicitor and the CEO of her own firm, Isla, which stands for Independent Legal Advice. And on top of that, she's got a huge passion for well-being and wellness overall, and runs her own retreats under an awesome brand name called The Busy Buddha. Anastasia, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We only met a couple of months ago, and I loved your story and what you shared with me there. So I absolutely wanted to have you on the show to go a little bit deeper into that. Now, the place where I want to start is obviously you're a CEO of your own company, you've got staff under you, and that's doing really well. We'll get back into that in a second. Who was Anastasia before she was the CEO, before Isla became a thing, and before the wellness retreats?
Sure. So, God, that was maybe 6 years ago now. So, I mean, Isla started 2 years ago, but the wellbeing retreats maybe started a few years before that. So, we're like, 5 years ago or so. Trainee solicitor, so I think I qualified when I was 26 or so, 25, 26. Aspirations to be that big city lawyer. So I was always in suits, stiletto heels, like chasing kind of like, they call it the glass building, wanted the sun, the stiletto heels on the floor.
So kind of like Suits, but in real life.
Yeah, nothing like this. Nothing like this that you see now. Absolutely not. So that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do. Had never contemplated spirituality. Didn't even know what it was. I always knew I wanted to work my way up in law, but didn't know necessarily I wanted to own my own business. So as I trained to be a lawyer, qualified, moved from a local firm in Bournemouth up to one in Southampton, more of a city firm, and just wasn't happy. So like I'd originally kind of qualifying, you get to what we call destination syndrome. You know much about that. I'll be happy when. So when I qualified, you get there, you're like, well, this should feel great. And it didn't. And so then I started having panic attacks and couldn't really work out why. So for me, I'd classify myself as a strong female. So I was like, I'm strong. What is this nonsense? Weak people have panic attacks is how I felt towards it at the time. That's not correct, by the way, just putting that out there. That's how I felt at the time. And so just was like, put a pin in that. We're going to ignore that. It's not something we're going to pay attention to.
Push it to the side. You don't want to pay attention.
Don't pay attention to that. It's silly. But they kept happening. And so eventually I did have to pay attention to it. And I went to hypnotherapy. That was my catalyst for change. A chap called Paul Hill. I owe a lot to him. I always say to him how grateful I am for everything. I think he was the catalyst for everything that I am now and everything I became in Isla. So through hypnotherapy, I unlocked just this new fearlessness where, like, I think a lot of lawyers, we're in control all the time. So anything that's outside of that can be a bit scary. And I unlocked this fearlessness where I was like, so what? Life's here just for trying and living. But once I had this realization and worked on a lot of things on myself, I was like, I need to share this with the world. I need people, particularly lawyers or professionals, accountants, people who classically would be turn their nose up at spirituality.
Yeah.
A lot of them use the term woo-woo. It's really woo-woo. What's this fluffy stuff? You're away with the fairies. And that's something that I was very aware of, that lawyers thought, or, accountants, busy professional people. And it's not. It's a toolbox for my success. Like, I owe most things to my ability to look after my mind. So I really wanted to share it with the world. And so that's where the Busy Buddha was born. But in the Busy Buddha becoming born, I then wasn't aligned to classic law firms. So this desire to help other lawyers meant that I just saw things a bit differently, as well as in the normal corporate business wasn't working for
It's
me.
very cutthroat as a lawyer, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so I remember saying to my boss at the time, I've got this idea about this retreat that I want to launch. He was like, Anastasia, sounds like you're doing more of this business development stuff that we already know you're good at. It's not business development, it's people, it's connections, humans. Well, Anastasia, I'd like you, bum on chair, just doing your billable hours. I was like, are my billable hours down? Or is there a problem? No, but just So, okay, Anastasia, you can't be a business owner and a lawyer. Well, aren't partners business owners? Don't you own a part of a business? Like, you need to decide what you want. And the final kind of blow for me was he said, you're just a square peg in a round hole. I was like, oh, okay. So I don't fit in here. So that for me, I handed my notice in pretty much right away and didn't have a job. That was just...
You just left, you packed up and you're like, I'm done.
Yeah, but that I owe that kind of fearlessness, I think, to hypnotherapy. Like, just being like, so what? Like, maybe it's a bit reckless, but
okay,
so what?
So, like, obviously, who you are in front of me today and who I know from you, because we've not known each other that long, you don't strike me as someone who ever had fear or really let it take over them. But obviously, from what you're sharing, there was a time where that was not true. And actually, there was a side of you that was maybe quite fearful. What was that person like, and why did that person choose law?
That person was quite robotic, so very driven, as in like, if I do 1, 2, 3, I'll achieve this. So that was why, part of the choosing of law was based on the fact of wanting also, maybe some of it in your ego, I wanted to, well, a lawyer's a good job. It means you've done well. And actually, if I apply my mind, I can succeed. So it's quite robotic in terms of there isn't much kind of maybe connection or empathy for me at that time in my life anyway. I think as well, a lot of it's kind of control. I control outcomes on things. I could be like, if I work hard, I would achieve this, which is still a good skill to have, by the way. If I do this, I think I'll achieve this. But not in touch with my feelings, not in touch with humans or humanity, I think.
Why do you think that you were operating that way, where feelings weren't something that you wanted to acknowledge?
They just get in my way, I think I would have thought. Yeah, I think also we're told, like, control your anger, control this. We hear people say that, right? But it's like, does that mean we don't feel it, or does it mean we feel it and learn how to harness it in the correct way? And I think I just had done it where it's like, don't feel this or that or whatever. And I also think we learn things, and I know through my hypnotherapy, subconsciously we learn things as we're growing up and we don't realise it. And that's a massive thing that hypnotherapy taught me, that if we don't kind of, we go to the gym or we do things to help our body to heal and to grow, but we expect to take blow after blow mentally and just function. And I think parts of my growing up, maybe I'd learned just to be strong. I'd come from a Greek family, and there was this strength in us and this, this pride. And I think you learn, I'm not saying that was bad, I had a fantastic upbringing, but as in we learn maybe things that aren't so good for our well-being in terms of how to connect and say, actually, I do feel sad and I'm not okay. And I think that's something that I very much experienced earlier on. And then that's when the panic attacks things happened, which my body was just going, no, like, you need to recognize what's going on here.
I think that's actually very common in immigrant families generally. So were your parents, did your parents come over?
So my dad's Greek Cypriot and his parents came over from Cyprus.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So even from my family, like my parents came over from East Africa. And I think it's that mentality of you're in a new place.
Yeah.
So you've got to work and forget everything else. Forget your feelings, forget what you might be going through. We've got an opportunity here and we just got to take it, which is not a bad thing at all. But then I don't think mental health and dealing with those feelings was as big a deal back then as it is now.
Absolutely not. No. Yeah, you're right.
So you left work pretty much on the spot after you heard that
pretty much
statement from your boss. So how did you go from this is me, I'm a lawyer, because that's quite a strong identity to be attached to as well. So how did you go from this is me, I'm a lawyer, I'm successful, I'm controlling my outcomes, to dealing with the fact that there was all of a sudden no job, no structure. Like, what goes through your head in that time? The purpose of this podcast is to help you make your dreams a reality in every area of life. And that includes traveling and exploring some of the world's most beautiful destinations, like the Maldives. Myself and my wife took a trip to the Maldives last year, and with the huge number of islands to choose from and the cost differences between all of them, it all became a little bit overwhelming. That's where Simply Maldives, a dedicated travel agency for all the islands, stepped in, gave us the best advice, helped us plan our perfect trip, and got us a fantastic deal. That's why I'm proud and excited to say that I'm now partnered with Simply Maldives. Their expert knowledge can help you plan the perfect dream holiday. Whether you're traveling solo, traveling as a couple, traveling with your family and kids, or you have specific dietary requirements, they have something for you. So if you're interested in jetting off to the Maldives for your next dream holiday, then reach out to Simply Maldives through the link below, and I can guarantee you'll be well looked after.
Yeah, I remember at one point, actually, I was walking over like a local heathland and I felt really lost because, as you quite rightly said, it's the word I heard you say, then identity. It wasn't my identity. It's all I knew I was. I was a lawyer. That's who I am. That's what I identified as. And that's where my self-worth, I think, came from. So, you know, like, it would maybe the thing I'd led with when you introduce yourself, you rely on that or something. And I remember being like, what am I without that? Like, and that in itself, when you start asking yourself harder questions, is where the growth comes from, right? So it takes a lot of strength, and it didn't happen initially, to kind of re-carve out who you are or why you're doing certain things. I didn't really know at the time, but I knew, as I said, with hypnotherapy, meditation, because hypnotherapy alone might not, change your life. You need to then embed other things like meditation, yoga, mindfulness practices. That just gave me the courage continually just to be like, trust the process. So I became a consultant solicitor at a local firm before I'd started Isla, after I'd left this other firm. And again, people would say to me, you can't be a consultant. You're like 20, I think I was like 27. You can't be a consultant at 27. Like, usually a consultant solicitor is someone who's a bit old, well, a lot older, and has got a client following and sits at home and does their own hours. They're like, you can't do that. And I was like, no, you can't do that. It's not me. Don't inflict your self-limiting beliefs onto me. But that kind of fearlessness only came from things like hypnotherapy, meditation. And there's a big difference between the original fearlessness that I might have felt, where I just did it anyway, whereas this actually was from my soul, where I was like, I just don't care. Like, it will be okay.
Would you say that the first round of fearlessness that you experienced was more of a action driven by, 100%. I have no choice but to get this done, and this is what it's going to take to survive?
Yeah.
Versus now the fearlessness you experience is, actually, do you know what? I'd love to go and create all these things, and I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just going to go and do it.
Absolutely, 100%. So when I was in my early stages of my career, I remember I used to regularly just throw up, right? Sounds strange thing to say, but I remember I'd come home from work and I was being sick. My mum would be like, oh darling, you've had a hard day, have you? Like, what's happened today? And that would be coming from the physical reaction of my body, of like sat at my desk being like, oh, no, I've got to get this done. And then my body being like, no, you can't. And I'd just run to the toilet, throw up, carry on. Like, you got to keep going. Compared to now, I would feel that fear and be like, I'm going to take some time. Like, actually, I feel anxious. Like, and I might express it, and I might be like, actually, I need some help. And then I might do it. It's different, entirely different of fearlessness and how I'm treating myself and how I'm exhibiting that to the world and what I'm saying out loud.
There's something that you shared there, which I think is super important to touch on. How difficult was it for you to ask for help?
Oh my goodness. so hard. So like previously I never would have asked for help, and it's something I used to do, and I can see my former self. And when I go into meditative states, often I go back to my former self, and there's a lot of healing that comes with it. And if I was stressed out, I'd look at the floor, I'd walk around slamming cupboard doors, and I'd be looking at the floor because I didn't want anybody to see me. I wouldn't even look up I didn't want anyone to see me struggling, but then obviously that's not nice to be around someone who's, slamming doors and won't look at anyone. And I just couldn't bear to ask for help because that was weak in my mind. But actually now I know that to be completely untrue. Like, as now a leader of a team of now maybe 15 of us, I'm really open if I'm having a tough day, because actually that takes so much strength to be like, hey guys, I'm not 110% today. Like, or, I'm really struggling with this. Would you help me? Like, to my partner, like, and you have to be able to say these things, but that was hard. One of the hardest things I think I've ever done, to be able to actually be like, to know how to voice it and to be okay with that.
And what has asking for help unlocked for you since you started doing it?
So much. So one, actually having other people help you. You can't do everything on your own. It's not possible. You can get so far on your own, but you can't, the things I want to achieve, you can't do on your own. So actually the physical doing stuff, but also you mentally, because again, we can't fix all our own problems. It's not possible. Like, you take cars to get MOTs and people would work on it and collectively people help fix it and then it carries on driving. You can't expect yourself to go through life just like crashing into things and never being repaired or helped by someone else helping to fix you. We can only heal ourselves so far. Otherwise we need other people. And so when they say, look, I'm going to help you with this mentally, you unlock new things in your mind that you couldn't have possibly tapped into before.
I love the analogy. Like, it's the same as a car getting an MOT.
100%. If you drove a car for 30 years, did you expect it to never have an oil change, never have anything done to it and still drive? It's not possible.
Yeah.
Our brain's exactly the same, but we just don't think it is.
So, you left law and went on a bit of a journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
As a result of that as well. What made you choose as a CEO to go back into law? Like, what was the reason? Because it sounds like, and I could be wrong here, but I'm curious, it sounds like you almost fell out of love with the way it was. And it's probably a point in time when most people go, well, that's not the career path for me, or that's not an industry I want to be involved in. Yeah. And yet you are now CEO of Isla, which is a independent legal advice firm, which is the exact same industry, but now you're running the show.
Sure. So I stayed as a consultant solicitor. So at all times I was still within the law, but my passion turned to the retreats. And for a while, I did wonder what I would do, whether I'd continue doing it. And I think part of it as well, you'll know, again, from coming from a family that I always wanted to make proud, was I just hanging on to parts of law because I couldn't bear to say, hey, Dad, actually, I'm not a lawyer anymore, or whatever, I don't know if that's entirely true, but maybe that kept me hanging in there a little bit at the time, particularly as I was becoming my own sort of person, having my own strength to be like, I know what I'm doing and you can trust me, it's okay. Yeah. So maybe that held me on a little bit there. But other than that, I did love the law. I liked being a lawyer. I like difficult stuff. I like challenges. I like losing my brain. But what I didn't like is the industry and how it treats people and how it glamorizes basically just being robots. And what people don't think lawyers are nice people. I mean, obviously there's some people who do think they are nice and they've met others, who are nice. But generally speaking, the industry has a really bad reputation, and there is actually a reason for that. So for me, I spent some time going down this retreat path, and it really helped me grow. I think it really helped hold me accountable to be able to help others. So again, I think if you want to work on something, if you put it out there for other people, it will help hold you accountable. Because I was like, hey, if I'm going to be showing up to these retreats and offering these to people, I better be doing it in my life, because how can I be turning up and telling people what they should be doing if I'm not doing it in mine? But the idea really to do it my way was that combining two passions, I want to be me. I want to feel connected or aligned, but I liked being a lawyer. So what was the solution? Do it my way in my own law firm. But that in itself, I don't think I would have had the courage to do. If I don't go all the way back to hypnotherapy, I don't think I would have had the courage to do it.
So let's talk about the Busy Buddha and the retreats, because that is obviously a big part of your life. And what I love about what she said is that you are a practitioner of what it is you're preaching. And that applies both to the law firm, because you want to do it your way and you want to be different to how the industry does it. What is it that you practice regularly from a well-being standpoint, and how does that filter into the Busy Buddha, and what's it designed to do for someone? Sure.
So Busy Buddha, we'd run, so 2 retreats have been run so far. Actually, the third was supposed to be last year. So just I actually didn't run the third one, and there's actually an interesting reason why. Is because at that point I just had launched Isla, and I wasn't living by the principles that I needed to turn up to retreat and be there for people in that way, because I was driving Isla so hard at the time, which is sometimes required of us. And the retreats take a lot of organisation, that I was like, I'm going to turn up and be a nervous wreck. I was like, I can't do this. And I actually pulled the retreat. So that's an interesting point where, like, you have to live by those principles, and I had to stand by that, and was like, I had people booked onto it, and I pulled it. And for me, I will go back to doing those retreats. But again, it's like I genuinely mean it when I say to do something that's a passion of yours or to help others. It has to come from within. If you're not in a space to do that, you have to recognize that as well.
It's a huge amount of self-awareness for you to realize that actually you're not in the right mental or energetic space to run that retreat. So how do you make that decision to pull a retreat that in itself is a business? It is income generating. And like you said, you had people booked on.
Yeah.
Why did you make that decision? And why not? And this is where I'm curious, why not have someone else run it for you? And you know, where was the need of that feeling inside going, do you know what, I absolutely can't run this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I joke, so it's Paul Hill who runs it with me, the guy who did
the hypnotherapist.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, you've got to be in on this, dude. Like, you're the lifesaver, you're the life changer coming on this. Of course, I wouldn't do it without him. But we joke, and I'm the human walking billboard for it, right? So if I'm not there, what's going on, you know? So I wanted to run it. It had to come from me. And I remember when I first created it, I was like, you know, also the fear of, will they experience what I've experienced? And am I getting people to pay all this money? And they might just think it's a load of nonsense. And people came on it and were in my arms, hugging me, like crying, like, Anastasia, you've changed my life. Like, people came on the retreat and didn't have space, mental space to want to have children. And they call me and like, we're having children now. And like, makes you even well up thinking about it. Like, you change people's lives. Like, I even had a message from a lady who came on my first retreat and the second retreat maybe a week ago. So I haven't seen her in a year or so. And she said, Anastasia, just to let you know, I'm now living in Mallorca after quitting the corporate life, and this is all thanks to you. Thank you so much. I'll never forget you. And I was, again, makes me almost well up, because you're like, I've changed people's lives. And that's why I can say at the same time, it's no joke, people's lives. So at the same time, it gives me the courage to say, guys, trust me, you trusted me to help you. Trust me to tell you when I can't right now. And that's a really powerful kind of boundary to have for yourself and for other people, just to say, look, you've got to trust me. And I say, I can't give this to you right now, but when I can, I'll be back. And all of them got it.
I freaking love the level of self-awareness that you have, and also the level of responsibility you take on that as well, because as a person who is the walking billboard for it, you know, people will look up to you in a lot of different ways.
Big responsibility to lead people.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about people's lives in all aspects, right? So leaving careers, starting a family, moving country, those are all big things that people might be searching for. And I mean, that is amazing to hear that that's the way that you approach that, because that's a level of love and care that you have towards what you stand for and what you're going to do for people, that I think is actually really something to be admired. So that's amazing.
Thank you. And the same goes in the law firm, right? So if I stand for certain things in law or business, you know, the same applies there. And I think if you can do it at like a deeper soul level, then it actually becomes a bit easier to do it in business and stuff, like having that integrity and following things through. If you can do it for yourself at the real depths of your core in things that are really sensitive, then actually doing it in kind of business space becomes actually really easy. And that's how I can kind of align things like that to what I'm feeling, but also kind of make as level-headed decisions as I can about things.
For someone that's created their own law firm and is doing it completely differently to what the majority of the industry might be going through, what's been your biggest challenge that you've had to overcome?
People, staff, hard. Like, love all my staff dearly, but hiring people, knowing what makes them tick, is in like, this person's motivated by this person's motivated by this. No one's the same, and that's actually really hard. So like, you know, making the law firm, you know, how do you apply to the SRA? What compliance things do you need? That's all very robotic in one sense. The ideas of how my process and systems are going to work, the technology, slightly more complicated, because you've got to get that right for it to be unique, for it to be consumer facing, for everybody to love how it operates. But that, again, just came from my mind. So I, you know, created all the systems and processes, how it was going to look. So my mind kind of just does what it does, right? So easy. People,
Different
where to begin? Like, I don't know what's in your mind. I have to trust that you tell me. I have to trust that I get things right. And then, you know, you can add some beanbags in, but then that might not be what they care about. They might care about, I don't know, what the bonus structure is. And it's hard, really hard. Really hard.
What makes you a good leader in your eyes, knowing that you have to deal with trying to change the way an industry works and dealing with people in a way that you've never done it before.
Yeah.
What makes you a good leader?
Transparency. So I just openly say, like, I don't know the answer to that. Like, there's nothing, most people, whether you're the start of your career or 50 years into your career, can spot whether someone's telling the truth or being authentic. Mostly, you know, obviously the more experience you get, the more you can tell if someone knows what they're talking about. But so yes, to maybe more junior staff, I could come across like I know what I'm talking about. But they can still spot, people can still spot if something's not right.
You can feel energy when someone's chatting shit, basically.
Exactly. So I'd just be honest and be like, you know, I don't know the answer to that. Or, you know what, actually as a business, we're going through this right now, and actually this is going to take a lot of time from me. Or if I'm going something in my personal life, I'll say to them all, like, hey team, I need you all right now. I need you all to just hold the fort for me, please. And they do. But if you were coming in and you were just grumpy and sharp, people are thinking, well, I don't want to help you because actually you're just an arse. But if you're just transparent and open, I think people respect that.
For anyone listening that might have a viewpoint that level of transparency and vulnerability is a potential sign of weakness, what would you say to that person?
I've been there. And you have to trust that actually what you're trying to hide probably more about lying to yourself. I'm okay. And if I say it out loud, it admits it's a problem. I think actually it's more about you. You're probably not, it's not even maybe about what you think what the other people are going to think. I think it's maybe more about admitting things to yourself. But I have been there, and I would never have, even with my partners, people who are supposed to be the closest people to you in the world, had said I would never have been that transparent. Now that I am, the business in the last 2 years has grown from just myself and my co-founder to a team of 15, 7-figure business. And it's the growth is massive, and I think we owe a lot of that to us as being open, transparent, and just good people.
Transparency and vulnerability is clearly the biggest strength.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is amazing. You spoke a lot about fearlessness. What's the one thing right now that you fear the most in life?
Oh. Do you know what? And it's going to sound really counterintuitive to everything I've just said, but it's a journey that I'm still on, is just fully being seen for myself. So I'm still in that journey. Massively, it takes a long, long time. So I think I have moments where I just fear maybe who I am, that maybe I'm a bit different. Maybe my mind's a bit different. Maybe, I look a bit different. I don't know, all these things that, and maybe there's a fear of not being accepted. So whilst I've just spoken for this whole time about be you, it's hard. And actually that probably is still one of my biggest fears.
I love that, because the way I see it is that journey of being seen, like I'm terrified about exactly the same thing, which is, am I going to be accepted for just being truthful or being me or being open or having my opinion, etc. And I don't think that journey ever ends.
No.
I don't think there is a point like unless it was like on a leap year, the 29th of February, and that's the day. But I truly believe that journey is going to be forever, because every time we evolve to another version of ourselves,
got to start again.
That's you realize that actually there's like another level, and you're like, oh shit,
I've got to start all that again. I think I'm going through that again right now. And it's like, I thought I did that, and then I was like, that wasn't even me. So yeah, you're right, you get there closer and closer each time. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, who has been the biggest inspirational mentor for you throughout this journey, if there has been one, and what in your opinion makes a good mentor?
Do you know what? I've been asked this question a few times. I always really struggle with it because I don't think I have one. I think I take things from various different people that I meet along the way. I don't have one person that I idolise, to be honest. I'm quite observant, so I'll see things in someone and think, wow, that was really cool. I'll often tell them. So sometimes people are like, well, that's a bit, you're a bit overly friendly. Why are you saying that to me? It's a bit weird. But I'll just say like, hey, that thing you just did right there was really nice. Or like, I watched you do that. Watched you go over and like help that person that was sat on their own. I thought that was really cool. And I take little snippets from different people but also the opposite. So I'll see things in people that I don't like, and I'm like, do I not like it also because it's a trait in me? Like, 'cause people are a mirror. Yeah. So we're like, why does that person make me feel that way? And you have to ask yourself what that is actually. Is it about us rather than them? So I think everyone I come across is potentially an inspiration. And if they're not inspiring me, perhaps they're doing the opposite. And what is that telling me about my inspirations and what I want?
I love that. I've done a little deep dive into your social media.
Good.
And
wait, I'm like, what?
The level of fear that has just come over you. So I've done a little deep dive into your social media, and what I've done is I've picked out 3 things that you said which I really liked, and I'm going to repeat them back to you, and just want to get a deeper insight from your perspective now live around what you meant about what you said. Okay, so the first one is that it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see.
Gosh. So, I can't remember when I said that. I must have been feeling particularly poetic that day. So, what I mean by that is, what I mean by that now, what I feel towards it is many people, we could all look at the same thing and see something different, right? So, do you see an opportunity? Do you see something that's dangerous? Do you see something that's a bad idea? Do you see something that's silly? So again, it's what lens we're putting on. So, through gratitude practice, but be careful with gratitude that you can get false gratitude, as in we think everything's really, really good, but actually sometimes we don't see other things in it that aren't so good.
Before you continue, what is the difference between what you experience as gratitude and what you've experienced as false gratitude?
Right. So if we're practicing gratitude, we're looking at the good things in our life to be like, okay, I'm grateful for this thing. And then obviously we put on, whoever had it, if you think about a yellow car, guess what? You're going to go see loads of yellow cars. It's just what lens we're putting on. But false gratitude, I think, can be quite dangerous, where we actually just aren't feeling negative feelings. We're not allowing ourselves to feel pain or negativity because we're like, everything's good, everything's great. And I've done that and it was not good. You have to feel pain, feel hardship, or see things maybe for not, if something isn't that great, be like, that's not that great, this is bad. But also the gratitude, what I mean by them practicing gratitude is seeing how we can make it better. So that's my slight difference between the two.
I love that. I've never heard it put that way, because I know you can have an over positive view on life because you don't want to acknowledge the negative stuff. But I love the way that you phrase it, which is you can have gratitude or you can have false gratitude.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a term for it.
I mean, it's definitely a term to be coined from now on. I love that. Okay, the second one. Take care of your energy and the universe will take care of you.
Sure. So
do you really believe that?
Yeah, for sure. I used to be, again, this is another kind of part of my journey that I'm on now, is I gave my energy to everyone, as in, because I thought I could handle it. So again, I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm a leader, I'm resilient. And I would just give it to everyone and anyone who needed my energy, because I thought that was also a compassionate thing to do, a strong thing to do, but actually it's not. You need to be careful with who you're giving your energy to. Not necessarily because you want anything back, but if we're continually pouring out our energy and no one's pouring back into us, not good. So like one of the quotes we often use at the Busy Bidder, Paul Hill taught me this. So the oxygen mask example, okay? So when you sit on a plane, they say fit your own oxygen mask before you help others, because otherwise you pass out and you wouldn't be able to help whoever is next to you. So if you're not protecting your own energy, the universe can't kind of give back to you in the sense of, whether that be another person or an opportunity, because you're just drained. What's
the most practical way that you look after your own energy or refill it?
Boundaries. So, I say that now just so firmly because I was rubbish at that. So just being like, no, I don't want to do that. And you don't even have to give a reason why. You just don't want to do that. But then also saying when I need time on my own, I need to go and do this, or can someone help with this? So actually just being really clear and intentional with what you need, but also what you don't want to do.
I have a feeling that a lot of people listening really struggle with saying no.
Yeah.
What is your advice to those people?
It's
and
hard.
By the way, I am one of those people, and I'm learning.
Hard. And there's so many different scenarios where saying no kind of applies. So like in business, we don't want to say no, because particularly as small business owners, you'd like, well, I need to take every single opportunity. But actually that can then spread you too thin. And wherever you are, you're not present or you're not making the most of those opportunities. So there's the bad side of not saying no. And then with like friendships or connections, like actually, again, we're just diluted because we're everywhere, but we're nowhere. So like, if you're going to say no to certain things, then really invest your time and energy into other things. But it's not the advice. It's not easy. It takes a long, long time. And I get it wrong all the time still, but I'm trying. It's all that matters.
Yeah, I really love your transparency. Like
Yeah.
it's so real, and I really hope that everyone listening who's going through something like this, where they're struggling with saying no, don't expect it to just change overnight, where you're suddenly going to be able to set clear boundaries. You're going to say no to everything that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
It's a journey, just like with everything else.
Yeah, and just turning up for yourself and being your own kind of voice. That's really hard, I'd like to say. But I want this, because often we can feel like that's like, well, I'm being demanding or I'm being difficult. But actually, if you surround yourself with the right people, they will not see it that way. I know if I said it to you, hey, actually, you know what, you want to do this thing, I'm just not there right now. You'd be like, yeah, sure, Anastasia, no stress. But if you've said to the wrong person, oh, you've let me down, or this, that, and the other, you have to, it's also as much about the people you're surrounding yourself with as well.
Do you feel guilt often?
Used to. Still do, but not as much. Again, that comes with where I feel like maybe we could have things where we attribute our self-worth to what we can give others. When we say no to things, that can make us feel guilty. But I think if you live, I don't often feel guilty for my actions as such. It's more if I couldn't do something for someone, because my actions, I think if you're just authentically yourself and do what you feel is right and you live by the truth. So a lot of people, we talk about the truth, but what I mean by the truth is the actual truth of, you know, what you see or what you feel without trying to plan the consequence. And how can I feel guilty for that if I've just told you what I believe is the truth in that scenario? I can't really feel guilty for the consequence of it, because the truth is the truth.
I love that. And you're just clearing your whatever's going on for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Third one. Be who you are. And this is very on theme to what we've just been talking about. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Yeah, that's literally what we were just kind of talking about, really.
Yeah.
That I think, again, something I've learned was that trying to please maybe too many people or being around the wrong people meant that I did think about what I said. And then you're constantly thinking about things, and then you say something that you think they might want you to say, but then that causes the wrong outcome. You think, oh God, there was 100 different things that I could have said, and I should have said that, which causes this loop of guilt, of confusion. But again, if you're around the right people and you just say what it is or the truth, there's only one outcome. Whatever the outcome is just what it is, right? So it's when you're trying to think to engineer situations or say what you think people might want to hear that you're like, oh God, I shouldn't have said that, because there was 1,000 other things you could have made up and possibly said. But if you're saying just the truth, is what it is. And if you're around the right people, can't go far wrong. So that's where that comes from as well, I think.
And I guess if it does go sideways, then the question really is where you're around the right people in the first place.
Oh, but yeah, and was it right for you in your life? Because the truth is the truth. So there's nothing more you could have done or said.
I love that. There's a lot of potential overthinking that can happen when you go down the route of, okay, I can either be just honest and truthful here, or I can try and make something up because of the consequence, or you're worried about upsetting someone, or any of those things that we just discussed. How do you overcome the overthinking?
The truth. So originally, or previously, I might have thought of various different things that you could say. And what I mean, again, it's not that one was actively lying. You know, there's different people say, "Oh, tell the truth." But everyone would say, "Of course I tell the truth, I'm not a liar." I don't mean that. I don't mean, are you lying? I mean, to the depth of your core, is that the truth of what you think? Because first of all, sometimes we don't even know what we think. So you think you're telling the truth, but actually it's a big cluster mess of kind of things that aren't true, because you just don't know yourself, right? So I think a lot of the overthinking, just comes from you not knowing, you trying to manufacture the outcome, which is the control thing, which I think is also where kind of panic attacks came from for me, where it's like, if I do 1, 2, 3, this will be the result. And then when that's not the result, you're like, oh no, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
But if you just, I just tell the truth. But I don't mean not lying, I just mean the truth. So then you don't have to worry about it. It just is what it is.
The truth, no matter how uncomfortable it gets.
Yes, absolutely. But something I'd only really, really recently started to really understand.
Was there anything that triggered the understanding behind it?
Just a lot of changes in my personal life, a lot of kind of friendships that I had, relationships that I was in, that, you know, I wasn't asking myself the right questions. I wasn't asking myself hard questions. So I didn't even know what the truth was. But when you start asking it, you're like, and then it just doesn't stop. And then you can't stop. And then all of a sudden you're like, this is where we talk about the next version of you, where you've got to start again. And I'm like, okay, here's version 8,022, let's go again. You know?
I know this feeling well. What was the hardest question you ever had to ask yourself?
I think what I want from others. I think that's a hard question for me because I very much come from a place of service where I like to help other people. So anything of like, well, what would I want from you? To me, is like, oh no, I wouldn't want to trouble you. I wouldn't put that demand. Or actually, ask yourself that question of what you need from people around you, and then articulate it. And be okay with being like, do you know what? I love you dearly, but you can't give me what I want, and that's okay. But I have to leave this relationship or this friendship or whatever it is, you know, or those are hard questions that you have to ask yourself, of what you need and want from people around you. Because so many people, and there's a lot of people in a lot of networking events recently I've spoken to about it, that as they're growing and their friendship group aren't, they're very confused as to how to deal with that. Because yeah, but I like them or I love them or whatever. And it's like actually asking yourself really truthfully, can this relationship continue, is a hard question. And a lot of people as they grow, I think, struggle with that. And it's a hard question to ask.
I love that. I think that's going to be a very profound segment to this whole conversation.
Good.
So, final 4 questions for you. Okay. What's the one skill that you think is essential for anyone to succeed in this world?
Communication. We don't, again, this is like the truth thing. We let everyone, well, I can communicate. Okay, there's so much more. Yeah, you can talk, but are you listening? Are you comprehending? So we can talk, but if there's a nice quote that I like, you can communicate, but if there's no comprehension, you're living in silent chaos. Okay, so you have to, I know.
That was a mind-blown moment.
I know. And when I read that, I was like, yes, like you have to be able to communicate and listen and understand and actually really articulate what you're thinking. But also, to know what you're thinking, you need to ask yourself the truth. So it goes really deep. We don't just mean, can you talk? Most people can talk. Can you really, really, really communicate?
Oh, I love that. This podcast is called, yeah, you did great. This podcast is called the Mindful Creator Podcast. What does being mindful mean to you?
Being in the present moment, focusing on the present moment. So mindfulness practices, there's multiple different ways you can practice mindfulness, but just being aware, of what's, so sometimes I just look at my hands to bring me back in, or if you're driving, just look at steering wheel, also look where you're going, but you know what, don't just look at the wheel.
Don't look away from the road, folks.
But just really, really kind of being in this present moment, being in your breath, can really ground you, being grounded.
Yeah, I love that. I use breath a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's such a powerful way where you just count the number of seconds that you're breathing in for, and then count the number of seconds that you're breathing out. But I love what you just shared as well. Like, just look at your hands.
Yeah.
And notice like the lines.
Yeah.
Between your knuckles.
Absolutely. If you're walking down the road, you can practice it anyway. When you're walking down the road, can you hear the birds? Can you see the leaves blowing in the wind? Anything just to really draw you back into the present moment.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say has been a transformative book or movie that you've either read or watched that had a pretty significant impact on your life, and what was the lesson?
Significant book. It's a book it's about the Buddha, and I can't remember what it's called. It's written in by a Western person, and they spend time with the Buddha, and I can't remember exactly what it's called. I'll have to pop it over to you. But some of the lessons he teaches are really kind of, again, profound about how we can marry those two worlds together. So, for example, one of the things that always stands out to me that he says in this book is this Western person is like, hey, you're on a bus and there's this bloke and he comes on with his kids and the kids are screaming. He's not being great with the kids. And everyone's like looking at him like, dude, like, what's your problem? Then you find out the information that his wife sadly passed away. Now your mindset has all of a sudden changed about your view towards that person. So without information or context or understanding, we get things wrong. So for 1 second you can think, wait, who's this arse? How is he behaving like that? Your kids are out of control. This. But then when you find out that information about him, all of a sudden it just disperses. So really kind of understanding how we see things in the world. And another one in the same book, this Western is abroad and I think he gets robbed. Someone steals his phone. He's like, God, take my phone. I needed that. It's my work stuff. Then you understand the person who stole from you actually can't feed his family. They've got children, he can't feed them, and they're hungry and they're starving to death. Now, you probably, again, would change your mind slightly on how you felt towards the situation if we just understand people, why they behave in a certain way. So maybe ask before you presume. And I know some of those situations we can't ask, but generally the message is really understanding where people, there's usually a reason why people behave how we behave. And if we can think that, it actually creates more peace in us, because you're less angry. You're less angry at the world. You're less kind of like resentful to, you're annoying me and this person's done this. You actually go, do you know what? There probably is a story behind it, and that's okay. So if only for your inner peace, start thinking like that.
I absolutely love that, because it just takes every circumstance
Just the edge off it a bit.
Yeah, and it adds the viewpoint of empathy to go, well, what was the reason?
Yeah.
And is there a way to understand or comprehend what that person was potentially going through? Because a friend of mine who does psychology for traders, he talks about this all the time, and it's like trying to manage your emotional expectations and just managing the volatility of emotions generally. And it's very similar to what you just shared, which is, imagine you're driving along, and it's linking to road rage. So you're driving along, someone cuts you up, and you lose your shit, and you're like, oh my God, what's this guy doing? Like, how could he cut me up like that? You start hooting, you start trying to drive up the back of his car or whatever. Yeah. And flip that script for a second to go, the reason that you got cut up was because the driver in the other car was rushing to see his partner in the hospital because she's about to give birth.
100%.
Well, I mean, then would you care? Or would you actually then try and back off even faster to make sure that person got through?
Exactly.
Because that's the same circumstance. The only thing that's changed is your opinion.
Your knowledge, exactly. Sometimes if we don't know, we just don't know. And we like, maybe for our own peace and not to have the road rage, just go, I don't know why that's happened. So never mind. But it's harder said than done, Yeah. Or easier said than done. I think that's the way around. But anyway, it's...
definitely easier said than done on that one, especially with road rage, because it can happen in such a split second.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But again, that's where what I love about what you said before, doing everything that you can to bring yourself back to the present moment, it actually helps dissipate all of that emotional volatility as well.
Yeah. And if somebody was like, why don't we care what they're going through? If you get to that level of rage, then I said, well, do you care about yourself and how you're feeling right now? Because, a lot of us can, if we struggle with empathy for others, care about yourself is in like, do you want to be this angry, or do you want to feel this way towards the world? Well, no, and I'd like to be more peaceful, but they've done that. Well, actually start with yourself. And if you can just let go of that, or possibly conceive that there might be a reason for their behaviour, although we're not expecting you to get to the level where you care or have empathy, but for your own peace, start trying to kind of implement that.
I love that. Final question for you. If you could go back in time to your younger self and give your younger self one piece of advice, what age would you go back to, and what would you say?
Gosh, so I do a lot of this work in meditation, so I think we could open up a whole new another can of worms. And it often makes me emotional when I do this practice quite a lot. I'd go back to my 11-year-old self. So I knew this was probably going to happen. And just say to you're safe. It's okay. So like, I think where a lot of our fear comes from is maybe feeling alone or scared, and just holding our hand and being like, I'm with you. You're okay. Yeah. I
absolutely love that, and that is such a beautiful note to finish on.
Yeah.
So Anastasia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. That was amazing. It's my first one. So
there you go.
Really thank you for
now you're
me.
A pro. Now I'm going to see you all over on different podcasts.
Yeah, this is the catalyst for it. Thank you. Mark this moment.
Absolutely. I even start Isla's own podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe one day.
Amazing. Anastasia, thank you so much.
Thank you.